You're listening to Lighthouse Conversations, brought to you by Lighthouse Haven, a spiritual home for your awakening soul. Lighthouse Conversations is a show where awakening souls gather to be inspired, connected, and enlightened. Spiritual spark plug and host Chelly Canales, that's me, will guide you through the twists and turns of your journey to a safe haven where you are finally free to live your best light. Each episode contains a conversation with a guest who has gone through a spiritual awakening, detailing their unique and life-changing experiences in an intimate and candid way. Although everyone's experience is as unique as they are, we all share one common thread. We're all seeking something. So, come join us on this journey and be prepared to leave with resources that will supercharge you into inspired action. Here's today's episode. Hello, awakening souls. How are you doing? Have you worn through your fancy pajamas yet from all that daytime wear? Yeah, me neither. Definitely not. Honestly, I think, need to make an effort to be more biz cash at home and make myself a little bit more presentable. In fact, I thought, what about pulling out those old prom dresses? You know, bridesmaids dresses that will never get worn again, perhaps a ball gown and some jewels. You know, I'm definitely thinking about it. It's going to be a long time, I think, that we're going to be in our houses, and I believe in making the best out of it in whatever way that you can. So hopefully you guys out there are connecting to one another virtually, over the phone, telepathically. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can do that. But for today, I wanted to bring you some joy. This wonderful human that I'm going to introduce you to, Kim Corbin, she is a delight. She has brought skipping to the mainstream, and what I love about that is that it invokes this sense of play that we as adults, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I can say for me, that sense of play just hasn't been a huge part of my life anymore. I haven't been imagining or dreaming or skipping or, rolling down a grassy hill, all of these simple joys that can really raise your vibration. She's a wonderful advocate for that. I think that today's episode will bring you some much needed lightness and joy, and I invite you to spend some time with Kim Corbin. And welcome to the show, Kim. I'm so happy you're on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. I loved connecting with you over New World Library, where you are a senior publicist. You have this wonderful life getting to know all these authors and this incredible work. Shakti Gawain, Deepak Chopra, we have Eckhart Tolle, and you have these wonderful new authors who are releasing books that I get to read and I get to interview. So I am so jazzed and so pumped to do that, because that's probably one of my favorite things to do in the world, interviewing and reading. So thank you for bringing me into that world. That's exciting.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a win-win
It's a
situation.
win-win. I want to hear about your journey, how you ended up getting into New World Library, in the position that you have, but also you are a skipping champion. You have spent so many years of your life dedicating yourself to the joy and practice of skipping. And I just find that so fascinating, because play is something that as adults does not show up as easily anymore. And you're
Right.
making a dedicated effort to bring that into your life. So I just want to go back a little bit. Take me through your process. Have you always been spiritual? What was your awakening? How did we get this amazing soul that you are today?
Well, I would say that my spiritual awakening started back when I lived in the Midwest in Indiana, and I read The Road Less Traveled was the big book for me. That and Embraced by the Light by Betty Eadie, which is a near-death experience book. And
Yes.
so when I read those things, it was just like I just recognized the type of life that I want to live, which is always evolving and growing and trying to use my life to make the world a better place. Like I really saw it right from the beginning. People had told me in college, "Oh, you're a very spiritual person." And I thought, "I'm not spiritual. I don't go to church." Like I did not understand. And then once I read those books, I really understood. I ended up moving to San Francisco in 1996. I met a guy on the internet, which is a whole nother story. Way back then, it was very unusual. And I was working for my dad at the time, who had written a book about job searching and self-published it. And I fell in love with the book and convinced him to hire me to help him sell the book. And so I taught myself the publishing industry. that way. And when I ended up moving to San Francisco, I got an entry level job at a book publisher called Josie Bass Publishers, and it was the beginning of my official publishing career in the traditional sense. And I I was there when I was eventually became the publicity director there. Like I kind of worked my way up, and I was working there when I had my skipping calling came through. So the best way to describe it is as a calling.
It is, for sure.
Yeah, and it was actually the first time that I skipped as an adult, I was out. It was 1997, and I was out with a couple of friends, and one of them went skipping down the street, and I followed him, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I'm sure I could get my friends to skip with me, and I could do publicity, and it could start a skipping movement. And I wasn't ready at the time though to say yes. And so I tried to recruit a friend to be the skipper and I would be her publicist because that's what I was familiar with. And then that kind of fell to the wayside and 2 years went by. And then 2 years later, the calling came back around and presented itself to me. I was walking a labyrinth as an experiment and twice a week, and really asking the universe, how can I serve? What am I here for? What's my purpose? And it was during that time that I had tried to run to the labyrinth in the morning where I was walking because I thought, well, maybe I can. I've never been a physical fitness person. I couldn't get myself to work out. And I'm never going to be a runner. Still, I hate running. And I tried to run and it was a disaster. And then that same morning at work, my coworker told me a story about her daughter asking her to skip with her at the mall. And she said, I took her hand and I did it, but I thought adults don't skip. And when she said that, it was like the light bulb went off and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm ready to do it now. And so it was 1999. It was right when the internet was getting going. And so my brother helped create the website because he's great, really good that way. And just as I had that vision 2 years before, I started organizing group skipping events. I did publicity around it. It went out on the wire. And before I knew it, I was in Time and Newsweek and People, and there was hundreds of people all over the country who'd been skipping much longer than me who said, I want to help. And we had this like early social media before social media was even a thing. So that's
Wow.
kind of the early stages. And then I ended up quitting my job because I was getting so much national publicity. And so my dad would say, how does the cash register ring? And I was like, skipping is free. If I leap, the net will follow. And that didn't end up going so well. And I skipped myself into financial ruin and went through a really deep, dark night of the soul on the other side of it. But I really was doing my spiritual work throughout that and really really practicing the practices that I had learned and really got to put them to the test. And then through that process, there was a number of jobs getting back on the beaten path that were challenging, but it led me to New World Library, where I get to impact lives and in a much bigger way. And the skipping movement has continued to be its own wonderful passion project. It doesn't have to, skipping is free, and it still gets to be free. And so I get the joy of both of those things in my life, a really rewarding career in publishing where I get to work with all these amazing authors, and then my own personal passion for skipping, which is still going strong some 20 years later.
That's incredible. And you touch on such an important point, because a lot of times when we think about what's my purpose, what am I here for, we equate that automatically with what I do for a living. And
Yes.
it absolutely doesn't have to be. You can serve so beautifully in the job you have that you also are in alignment with, as well as your passion. So you're bringing these different parts of yourselves to the world, which actually are really the same part if you think about it, but they're showing up in different ways. And you found a really great balance of practical and making a living and having a job that you love, and being able to inspire yourself and others through this skipping movement. I also love what you said about I heard the call and I was like, nah. And then it
Yeah.
came knocking again. And what I've
Yeah.
learned is that if you don't answer the door, you're going to get pushed. You're going to get pushed through that door, and it's not going to be your choice. So I love that, the light bulb went off for you. Tell me more about sitting with yourself, and was it an easy thing at that point to finally say, yeah, I want to do it? And then what held you back the first time?
I think the first time I just wasn't at a point in my life where I was ready. I had just moved to California. I was in party girl mode. I
Mm-hmm.
was playing, just like I wasn't ready to really focus. And then the second time when the calling came through again, it was like, uh-oh, okay, so yeah, I'm gonna do this. But then like that night, I'm like, that means I have to get up to I wasn't skipping at all. Like I have to get up tomorrow and go for a skip by myself in my neighborhood. And that it's really interesting how I've been doing it for 20 years and I still have this inner dialogue that happens where there's a part of us that says adults don't skip and people are going to think I'm crazy and I can't do this. And what are people going to think of me? And all of those, for the first time, all of those, that voice of resistance or caution came in and said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. People are going to think you're crazy." And then I was like, "No, I think I do want to do it." And then I went for my first skip. San Francisco is the perfect place to skip. I mean, the first person looked me in the eyes and smiled at me, and the next three people just completely did not even acknowledge the fact that I was skipping. They don't care. Like you can do anything in San Francisco. So after I went for my first solo skip that morning, then I was more ready for it and started skipping on a more regular basis.
That's so brave. I love it because, like you said, those voices come in. Oh, this is weird. People will think I'm strange, but you just go and do it anyway. And how freeing is that?
Yeah, and it's really interesting as well how that inner dialogue, right, where the voice of resistance or caution or the status quo has something to say, and every time I choose the voice of my spirit over that voice, it's like the voice of my spirit gets stronger, and that comes in all areas of our life. Like when I'm writing, a voice says, "Oh, you've been trying to do this for so long. Why are you even going to try?" And I can recognize it more fully now and then make a more empowered choice because I really feel like our presence and our power comes from that moment of choice between the status quo and resistance and then the new exciting adventures that are calling to us.
Oh, yes. Yes, I can relate to that so much. I'm curious for you, how do you differentiate voice of spirit with voice of conditioning?
I feel like it's expansive and life-giving
Mm.
and it feels open in my heart. Like and like there's possibility and magic and imagination and a little nervousness. And then the other voice is more like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like kind of like putting on the brakes and wanting to just slow things down and that voice definitely has it's not I used to think when I first started skipping that I was just going to skip past that voice of caution forever. And that's not how it works. And if we think
Oh,
we can, you'll stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, and it comes out in very strange ways later.
yes, it does. It manifests in ways that you were not prepared for. And it's interesting because sometimes that resistance will come so strongly for me and I see it and I know what it is and I say I want to heal it and yet it still doesn't go. And it's funny because a lot of times physical activity is what helps shake it out. And that's
Yeah.
what's really fun about skipping too. Have you had any insights or like beautiful visions or things that happen to you during the act of skipping?
I would say that the feeling of freedom that every time I skip is there and just like the uplifting. So that would be a joyful thing. It took me a while, like for the when I first started skipping, it was more of I would just go into my inner world and just and kind of escape the world and skip in that way. And then over the years, I've gotten more and more comfortable with what I'm doing, where then I can like make eye contact with people and send positive energy out into the world instead of just escaping the world. So that would be like as my skipping has evolved, like that's a way that it's become more joyful and more expansive, I feel like.
And I feel like everyone that it touches gets more expansive just by watching you, that puts a smile on somebody's face. And I
Yes.
can imagine when different publications reached out to you to write about you, that there was a joy for them in that too. Did you learn anything from the process of being featured, so prominently and from the people who are writing about you?
It was interesting because the thing that the mainstream media really wanted to focus on was the physical fitness benefits of skipping,
Ah,
which there are many, but that was never my personal motivation. Like for me, it's all about freedom and that we live in this free country and choosing joy over fear. Like that's what I love about it. But the all of the mainstream media would be like, well, how many calories does it burn? And which it burns twice as many calories as walking. It has
yep.
less impact on your joints than running. Like all of these things. But so that was an interesting thing that I learned. Just or that as it showed me, like that's what people, and it's because that's what we're comfortable with. Like, people know they want to get their body in shape and that they can deal with the physical, but I was more, I've always been more drawn to the spiritual and emotional and the kind of free-spirited nature of skipping.
Would you consider skipping to be your spiritual practice, or do you also do meditating? Or, I mean, the labyrinth is a great example.
Yeah, the labyrinth was a really has been a really good one for me. I started a meditation group at work, and so we meditate every Monday and Friday for 10 minutes at the beginning of the day together, which is wonderful. So meditation is also one of my personal things, but skipping for sure is. And really, again, it's choosing joy and choosing and the way that it looks for me now is it's a vibration lifting kind of thing,
Yeah.
where I skip most often at the gym in the mornings, where there's an empty workout room, no one's in there, and I just put on a really happy song on my iPod and just skip for one song, but just like just like let that joy just come out, and like it gets stronger and stronger, and then I feel it throughout my day and throughout my life.
It's so funny. When you first said I was skipping at the gym, I was picturing you on the treadmill, and I thought that can't be safe.
Oh no, it is. I do that too, and it's so much fun to skip on the treadmill when you have a serious runner on either side of you and they're like pounding the pavement. And it's like I go at a fast walking speed, so not very fast. And I definitely encourage people just to skip a couple walk and then skip 2 steps, walk, skip 2 steps to get used to doing it. But it's so much fun just to be like la 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 skipping on the treadmill while
What
people
kind
are
of reaction do you get from your neighbors?
not very much, I mean, it's really easy. Our voice of caution says people are going to do this and you're going to get this huge reaction. And actually, people don't really, they're just busy doing their thing. No one really says very much at all there.
Yeah, they're like, just live your sweet life. I'll do mine. I'll get my minutes in, my miles in, and
Yeah.
you have fun, which
Yeah.
is let everyone be. I think there's something so powerful to allowing someone to be in their own space like that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So every day in your job, your day job, you are surrounded by spiritual teachers galore. The work that's coming in is incredible. You have so many beautiful perspectives. What's it like being in an environment where you get to have that all the time?
It's a wonderful bubble, to be in. I mean, and for me with the skipping movement, when I was doing it and I, quit my job and I thought that that was my calling, and it was really disillusioning when I didn't have that. The thing that I missed when it was kind of like floundering a little bit wasn't necessarily the skipping movement and everything that went with that. It was the feeling that I got of using my life to make a positive difference in the world.
Yeah.
That was what I wanted. It wasn't that I wanted to be the skipping queen. It was, I want to know, I want to feel that again. I want to feel like I'm using my life to make a positive difference. And the beautiful thing about being at New World Library, I've been there for 14 years now, is that every day I am doing that. And I'm really present to the fact that I'm doing that. By each season, there's a new batch of authors that comes in and that are doing amazing work in the world. And it's really just inspiring and wonderful to be connected with them.
I want to go back just a little bit because you mentioned the dark night of the soul and this period where you thought things would be a certain way and they fell apart. I want to go there. And it makes me laugh because I actually wrote my first book this year. It's an ebook right now. And eventually I want to make it like a full book. And it's the ABCs of Awakening. And because I'm me and I'm silly, D is for Dark Night of the Soul. I'm like, I know it's a dictionary. I know it's supposed to be one word, but it's in my book. So it's going to be all those words. Because I don't think you can really have a true awakening until you go through the depths. And there's a lot of Joseph Campbell stuff in there, the dragon at the cave and the saying no to the calling. It's all very symbolic, but when you're going through it, it's the worst feeling. Like for me, it makes me feel like I've never been farther away from my source, when in truth, that's probably the closest you might ever be. I want to hear about what that process was like for you and how did you come through it?
Well, it is true that it's darkest before the dawn. And actually, arriving at New World Library is, I feel like, where I started, starting the new adventure again. And I didn't I just didn't have the context of this spiritual. I didn't have your book. I didn't have the realization that actually, no, it wasn't that the universe was mad at me or I hadn't done good enough or I had failed in some way. It was like, no, this is a natural part of bringing anything into the world. And so when I came to New World Library, we published the Joseph Campbell Foundation books. And one of my authors, Bill Plotkin, wrote a book called Soulcraft that's all about the really kind of deep, dark, like going within work. And that helped me give me context to move forward through that and realize that it was actually a very important part of the process that helped me to grow and to learn and to let go of, at the very beginning of the skipping movement. My ego didn't know what to do because it was like telling me, no, 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 don't do this. And then my spirit took over and it was wonderful. But it didn't take very long for my ego to get really attached to my identity and the attention I was getting. And it was all with the best intentions. And it was all like, I'm doing good in the world and this is for good. This is for good. But the whole time I was just pushing down the darkness and trying to just skip past it. And you can only skip past it for so long. And so then when things weren't going well, there it was. And there were my insecurities. It came out actually, I was giving a talk at a radio station in the Midwest in Lima, Ohio. And I was just feeling all full of myself. And I started by singing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning." And it was like 9:00 and it was like all male, like ad sales guys from the radio station who just looked at me like, who the heck is this person? And I just had a panic attack. Like it completely
they didn't receive you
all
the
these
way you
things,
thought.
yeah, and all of these parts of me that I had just been like, oh, I'm over that. I found my calling and life's going to be a straight shot upward. It was like, no, actually there's a lot going on here. And when things started not going my way, I had to learn how to skip with those things and deal with them.
That is such a hard feeling. You're like, people love me. Here we go. This is what I do. And I'm just going to say the thing. And you're like, oh, yeah. So that didn't go as planned.
Yeah, I missed my audience completely. Horrible.
Well, if you start singing on my show, just know I'm going to sing with you.
Okay.
I'm a musical theater person. That's like part of my life is the acting, singing, dancing. That's always going to be a part of me, and the spiritual side too. So it's like I'm enjoying finding ways of putting them together and creating my life's work that way. And I really do think it happens when you accept all these parts of yourself, because like it's easy to put things in different categories. You could be like, okay, I'm a publicist and I'm a skipper, but it's all about showing up as your whole self. Do you find that it's gotten easier over time now that you've done it? Like you put yourself out there, you've gone through the hard things, you're on the other side. Do you live a different life than you did before you started this movement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 100%. But my relationship with my body has shifted completely from when I couldn't even exercise at all. Like I realized that instead of judging myself and my body as much as I did, that it's an ally and it's my friend and it's a wisdom giver, and like that has really helped. And then just kind of swimming in the water of New World Library all the time and having these lessons, there are different ways of looking at it. It's like I'm really committed to integrating those things in my life, and it over time, it takes time sometimes. I feel like when I first started the skipping movement, I had reached out to Patch Adams, who the movie was made about, and I sent him this amazing. I did this like Sark. She's one of our authors too, but she does these colorful books, and I made took markers and I wrote him this beautiful, beautiful letter, and he wrote back, and he became like a mentor to me, and he said to me then, this is going to take way longer. My Gesundheit Institute still hasn't happened. And it's been, I think it was 20 years for him back then. And he's like, this path, it unfolds at its own pace, and it's going to take way longer than you thought. And I thought at the time, oh, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like time really is an amazing teacher, and the wisdom and experience that comes with that time is you can only, you need it in order to be able to really start integrating the ideas, not just from our head, but how do we pull them into our bodies and into our lives?
Oh, and it's such a hard thing because I don't know if you're the same as me. I like to live up here in the ethereal realm. Like that's my preferred
Yeah.
place to be, and it's hard to be on the ground and to
Yeah.
like put those ideas and those thoughts into action, actually giving birth to the thing that you're creating. That's the really the hardest part. Have you found over time you've learned some good tips or tools to assist with that, bringing that to fruition?
Yeah, I think patience is the the biggest one.
Hard.
Yeah, and baby steps and really like and really I've been listening to The War of Art, which is all about resistance
Yes.
and moving through resistance
Stephen
and
Pressfield.
yes, yeah,
Mhm.
it's so great. And so just kind of that awareness of how how resistance does show up in our lives and how just being willing to step into the arena. Like I'm getting back into writing myself now and that kind of thing.
Great.
And it's like after a long break and it's like um just awareness around that and baby steps and showing up and not letting your resistance stop you from stepping into the arena.
Because process progress is a process, and it is a, even if you do take baby steps all of the time, it's gonna take you somewhere where you weren't before.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I started using this slingshot analogy. So you can like be over here and stay put and be unhappy, or you can be here and you pull back on that slingshot and it's a lot of tension. And you're like, I'm so uncomfortable. Why am I doing this? And it pulls further back and further back, and you think you're going to break, and then you release it, and boom, suddenly you're over there. A place you never could have gotten to if you hadn't gotten outside of your comfort zone. So it seems like it's necessary to know that, at least to expect that it could be hard, it could be difficult, and that it doesn't last forever. I guess I'm just giving myself a pep talk right now in
Yeah,
this
no, it's
moment.
so good, so good. And another thing I've heard, it was actually in the context of ending a relationship that it was on the Seinfeld one time that breaking up with someone is like tipping over a Coke machine. Like, and so I think this applies to our dreams and the things we're trying to bring into the world too,
Yeah.
where it's like you have to like it has to get some momentum. You can't just like push it. Like you got to get it rocking a
Ooh.
few times and then it goes over. But that rocking can take a while. And a great tool, and this is actually what I was doing when the skipping movement came through, is I'd like to do 21-day experiments where I take
Mm.
a new habit and I say, I'm going to do this for 21 days and see what happens. I mean, that nothing has been as dramatic as that calling coming through. And there's been
Yeah.
many 21-day experiences or experiments that I've started and not finished. But just the act of being always trying to reach for how can I improve and what can I try and give this a go. It's kind of like that the rocking of the of the
Of the
Coke
Coke
machine.
machine.
Yeah.
That is a really powerful image, and I'm really glad to have that in my brain now. It's like, okay, just gotta keep pushing, push a little bit harder. But then who's gonna clean up the mess is what I
That's
want.
right.
What kind of 21-day experiments have you done?
The New World Library meditation group was a 21-day experiment.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was a good one. One time I did a 21-day experiment where I was going to stop checking my phone in the morning when I first woke up.
Have
And that
backup.
one, you know what? It's like, no, I actually really like that. So I expected it to be this, oh, and then I'll be this more mindful person. No, I did it. And I was like, no, I actually like slowly getting my brain online and having that time. And so it didn't end up going how I thought it would go.
But you
Um,
learned that, and you wouldn't have known that otherwise, and you would have kept beating yourself up about it.
yes,
It's like, why am I still
exactly.
doing this? Well, because you're choosing to. It's intentional.
Yes. Yeah, I did. One I'm actually wanting to start up again is doing just 2 minutes of meditation before I leave the house for work in the morning, because I tend to be really like scattered and rushing and have leaving anxiety. And that's just a
Yeah.
good time to just stop and be like, okay, before I leave the house, I'm going to take 1 or 2 minutes and just meditate for a short amount of time.
Be mindful there. I think that's beautiful. Have you noticed a difference?
Yeah. Oh, and when I do it, I absolutely notice a difference. Yeah.
Just like the energy around you shifts, the people around you feel that and they shift. It's a great thing. I love that you brought this to the office, and I feel like it's something that should be mandatory. Or at least, highly encouraged in all
Yeah.
the business. Because what I'm truly seeing and what I'm hoping to be a part of the shift of is, because I was in nonprofit culture, I've been in corporate culture, is bringing the spirituality component in a very easy to digest way and non-scary way to the corporate culture, because that is like this, it's like overemphasis on the masculine qualities of logic and reason and deadlines, and all these things are very important, but it's been an
Yeah.
overabundance of that and not enough of the intuition and the flow and the connection pieces of things. And I think in order for our culture to shift, and it is happening, we have to introduce more of that in, and we're going to have a more balanced world in
Yeah.
general. So I'm actually pretty excited to see that people are more and more open to the possibility of introducing that. Even in sports, you're hearing about athletes who are bringing that in, and coaches who bring in meditation, and how some people might find resistance to that because it's new, it's different, it's woo woo,
Yeah.
but the results are real.
Yeah. Proof's in
It's
the
a good,
pudding, as they say.
the proof is in the pudding. And one thing I want to bring up, because I'm sure you've had to deal with this, doing something that's a little bit outside the box with skipping. Haters gonna hate. So how do you
Yeah.
deal with being seen, being out there, putting yourself on the line? And I'm sure you get a lot of love and support, but there's got to be people who try to bring you down. How do you
Oh,
handle that?
yeah. When I very first started the skipping movement, I had a cab driver. Sometimes we get our best wisdom from cab drivers or
Yeah,
unlikely
definitely.
sources. And he said to me, "Well, that's all. I love your enthusiasm. That's all very good. But what are you going to do when people don't like what you're doing? How are you going to deal with that?" And I
Yeah.
thought, what is he even talking about? And as it got more and more publicity, I would get hate mail. I would get people who, yeah, like, oh yeah, you're like a kid again, an attention starved kid, and just like so much negative energy from certain people that just couldn't allow it. And I feel like it's just really at the time I was so emboldened by my spirit and what I was doing that it just kind of like bounced off of me. But then for those kinds of people, but then I also had very good friends who at first couldn't deal with the fact that I was doing this. And I realized that really if it was bothering me, their criticism, that it was really a reflection of an aspect of myself that wasn't fully accepting it
Ooh.
either. So they were mirrors for me. And if it was like water off a duck's back and it didn't bother me, then that said something. But if it really was bugging me, it was like there's something inside myself that hasn't come to terms with this that I need to look at.
That's powerful, because I think if something really hurts us when somebody says it, it's because we in some way believe that about
Yeah,
ourselves.
it's a reflection.
It's a reflection. So it's about going deep, doing work, doing shadow work, looking at beliefs that we've held our entire lives and realizing they don't necessarily have to be true. Like, I don't know where you learned this, but we're not born that way. We're not born feeling that way about ourselves. So in a way, I guess a good way to think about it is seeing it as a gift of reflection, and being able to do something with that information versus like, why are all these people attacking me?
Right. And that's the real spiritual work. It's like when those moments come up, it's like that's when the practices, that's what they're for. And so it's just and it's going to be messy and you're not going to just feel good all the time. Like it's going to be hard, but it's all part of the process.
It is, it's all part of the process. So what's next for you? What is showing up in your soul's voice that says, pay attention to me. I want some of your time. Is anything coming up?
Right. I mean, I've been working on a book or struggling, trying
Good.
to write this book about my skipping experience for 20 years. And I put it away 5 years ago. And now I'm really in this place where rather than being like, I'm going to write this book and being attached to that, I'm really opening to the universe and saying, I need you to show me. Show me the way. Show me. One of my authors, Christina Rilo, says, play me like a finely tuned instrument in your orchestra. Inspire me. I need you to show me. And that involves like showing up. And so I've been journaling every day and just kind of really starting to open the space so that it can come through. Because I can't just say that and then go about my life and not make room for the grace to come in.
Right. Right.
Um, but so I'm really in this place of openness and receptivity. I'm starting a women's circle with a friend. I used to lead women's circles and it's been like 10 years
I love
and I
that.
need it right now. And so it's really just holding that feminine space and being open to the inspiration that comes in. And that may be a book, that may be some other manifestation that I can't even imagine yet. But I really am in a place of openness and receptivity for what spirit wants me to do.
Oh, that's beautiful. And if people want to learn more about you, if they want to work with you in some capacity, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, iSkip.com is the skipping website where you can find out like all the adventures of all the skippers all over the world for the last 20 years. And New World Library is at newworldlibrary.com. And New World Library is on all the social media channels and all of that as well.
It's an absolute pleasure talking to you. I feel more joyful just being in your energetic space and enjoying this conversation with you. Thank you for sharing your light and being a great example for people just being themselves fully every single day. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Skip on.
Skip on, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Lighthouse Conversations. If this show resonates with you, it would mean so much to have you rate, review, and share. Don't forget to follow us at chellycanales.com and on social media.